If a homeless man quietly walked into an upscale restaurant, would you see him as a human being or as a problem? A question that seems simple, yet has left millions silently reflecting. Today, we're going to tell you a very special story about one unforgettable evening when Elon Musk disguised himself as a homeless man and entered a place where no one wanted to welcome him. No one recognized who he really was. But one person, just one, chose to act differently. And that single choice triggered a series of events no one could have predicted. If you still believe that kindness exists, even in places that seem cold and indifferent, then stay with us until the very end. And if you appreciate stories that touch the heart, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Each week, you'll find one more reason to believe in the goodness of people. Part 1. A strange idea on an ordinary day. It was a gloomy afternoon at SpaceX headquarters. In a rare moment of quiet inside his sleek, high-tech office, Elon Musk, known for having hundreds of bold ideas a day, found his thoughts drifting somewhere entirely different. Not about rockets, not about electric cars or artificial intelligence, but about people. How would the world treat me if I were nobody? No fame, no status, not a single dollar to my name. The question had come from a casual chat with a colleague, but it lingered in Elon's mind for weeks. It wasn't a technical challenge. It was a human experiment. A few days later, he made a decision no one could have predicted. He would disguise himself as a homeless man. No press, no announcement, no cameras. Just him and the world outside. He visited a local thrift store and picked out worn clothes, a frayed jacket with thinning shoulders, a pair of beat-up sneakers with holes in the soles, a messy wig, and some light makeup to dull the features the world had seen on magazine covers. When he looked in the mirror, Elon froze. The man staring back wasn't Elon Musk, the pioneering billionaire, the tech world hero. He was someone ordinary, someone invisible. Perhaps someone who once had it all, and then lost everything. Now I'll finally see how society treats those who have nothing left to give. With that, Elon stepped out of his office. He brought nothing but a small wallet, a heart full of curiosity, and a plan no one had ever attempted. His destination, the Copper Elm, a sophisticated fine dining restaurant in downtown Santa Fe. Known for its elite clientele, sparkling crystal glasses, and the kind of politeness measured in sideways glances. It was a place where scuffed shoes didn't belong, where the uninvited were rarely welcomed. And Elon asked himself, if I were a stranger, tired, poor, and unimportant, how would they see me? The experiment began the moment he pushed open the restaurant's heavy wooden door. And he had no idea that he was about to witness one of the most powerful reflections of society he had ever seen. Part 2. When appearances become an invisible wall. Copper Elm, a name as elegant as it was unwelcoming, glowed under crystal chandeliers like a modern-day castle. Inside, the soft clinking of glasses blended with gentle classical music. The air was thick with sophistication, and just beneath it, silent judgment. Elon, dressed in a frayed coat, worn-out sneakers, and a messy wig, walked slowly into the restaurant. Everything paused for a few seconds. The sharp-eyed patrons glanced his way, their looks passing over him like a wrinkle on an otherwise flawless silk sheet. Then, just as quickly, they turned back to their glasses of red wine and expensive steaks, pretending the disruption had never happened. A hostess, hair pulled into a neat bun, wearing a tasteful black dress, approached with a strained smile. Despite her professional training, her eyes betrayed hesitation. "May I help you?" she asked, her voice soft but tight. "I'd like a table for one," Elon replied calmly. She glanced toward the bar, where the manager was already staring, shaking his head slightly. Though several tables sat empty behind her, she responded with polite firmness. "I'm sorry. We're fully booked tonight." The moment froze. Elon said nothing more. He didn't plead, he didn't protest. He simply stood there, in silence. And then something unexpected happened. From a hidden corner near the kitchen, a young waitress stepped forward. Her name was Anna, a recent hire who had only been working there for a few months. Her face was kind, her eyes bright, and behind them lived a quiet dream. to one day open her own small restaurant, one that reflected her heart. But what truly set her apart was how she looked at the stranger in front of her. Not with haste, not with judgment, but with calm humanity. "I'll serve him," Anna said clearly, gently, yet with conviction. The restaurant fell momentarily silent. The manager frowned. Some diners exchanged looks, a few smirked, but Anna walked steadily toward Elon, leading him to a small table near the kitchen doors, the kind of seat nobody wants. "Take your time looking at the menu. No rush," she said, setting it down with a warm, genuine smile. Elon nodded, quietly thankful. In his eyes, there was a hint of warmth, a flicker of emotion, and perhaps the start of something much greater than just a meal. A simple test had just been set in motion by the quiet kindness of one young woman. Part 3. The Glances and the Whispers. The meal began. On Elon's table sat nothing more than a plain bowl of tomato soup and a few slices of crisp toasted bread. A meal so simple it was almost silent in itself, yet the silence around him was anything but. All throughout the restaurant, the glances continued. Some were curious, some awkward, but most were judgmental. A few diners whispered behind their pristine white tablecloths. "Who is that guy? Doesn't really fit the vibe here. If they keep letting people like that in, regulars might stop coming." The voices weren't loud, but they rippled, like small waves brushing against a solid, unmoving wall. That wall was Elon. He didn't seem offended. He ate in silence, slowly, as if savoring each spoonful of soup not with his taste buds, but with his awareness. Every reaction, every furrowed brow, every sigh of discomfort, he observed and absorbed it all. Anna, the young waitress, passed by his table a few times. Each time, she moved gently, never rushed, never avoided him like the others did. She smiled, asked if everything was all right, treating him not just like any guest, but perhaps better than the well-dressed crowd around him. But not everyone held back like Elon did. At a nearby table, an older woman sat with her arms crossed, her gaze sharp with disapproval. As Anna approached, the woman lowered her voice, just enough for her companion and Elon to hear. "Why waste your time on that type of person? People like him just ruin everyone's appetite." Anna froze for a heartbeat. Then, with a deep breath, she responded, "I believe everyone deserves to be treated with respect, ma'am. Soup doesn't care what clothes a person wears." The air grew heavy. The woman turned her head in silence. Elon glanced quietly at Anna. In his eyes was something more than gratitude. It was admiration. Many people had preached to him about morality, kindness, humanity. But this young woman, with just a few actions and a single sentence, had brought those values back to life. Amid chandeliers and polished silverware. One small act. Yet it carried the weight of a bell that quietly rang across the entire room. And Elon, a man who had traveled the world over, felt, perhaps for the first time, that he was truly seen, even while playing the role of someone invisible. Part 4. When silence becomes an accusation. The meal had ended. On the table, only an empty soup bowl and a few crumbs of bread remained. Elon gently set down his spoon and looked up, scanning the room. The atmosphere inside the restaurant had frozen in a single heavy breath. He stood up slowly and began to walk, each step deliberate, as he made his way into the center of the elegant dining room. The soft scuff of his worn-out shoes on the hardwood floor echoed like gentle taps on the conscience of everyone present. Every gaze, whether reluctant or curious, now fixated on the unknown man in tattered clothes. Anna, the only server who had treated him with compassion all evening, stood frozen in place, holding an empty tray of glasses. Her eyes followed his every movement, filled with concern. Just then, the restaurant manager, a middle-aged man with a stern face, approached quickly. His voice was cold, clipped. "Sir, if you finished your meal, I'll have to ask you to leave." There was no anger, no surprise. Elon simply nodded, and then spoke in a low, calm voice that somehow carried across the entire room. "I will leave, but before I go, there's something I need to say." The restaurant fell into absolute stillness. A few guests whispered quietly. Discomfort was written across the faces of many patrons. Yet no one looked away. Elon raised his hand and removed the tangled, disheveled wig. All sound disappeared. The air thickened. The familiar face, the man seen on televisions, magazines, global summits, now stood among them in his rawest, most unpolished form. A choked whisper rose from a far corner of the room. "Oh my God, it's Elon Musk." Elon nodded, then took a step forward. "Tonight I didn't come here as a billionaire. I came as a nobody, someone you wouldn't look at twice. And what I witnessed was the unfiltered truth about how people see each other." The room remained silent. The manager stood like stone. Those who had whispered behind tablecloths now looked down, ashamed. Elon continued, his eyes piercing through each soul. "I saw the contempt in your eyes, heard the whispers, felt the avoidance, all of it, because of appearances." He turned to Anna, still standing there, her face flushed, hands trembling. Elon smiled gently. "But there was one person, just one, who saw me as a human being. And that is worth more than the finest meal in this entire room." His words hung in the air, closing the moment in stunned silence. Yet beneath that silence flickered the first spark of awakening. Part 5. A gift measured not by value but by humanity. The atmosphere inside Copper Elm was now completely still, as if every word Elon had spoken still echoed within each person's heartbeat. Everyone stared at him, not with the casual curiosity of a morning newspaper reader, but with wide-eyed realization, quiet shame, and deep reflection. Elon turned and looked directly at the young waitress standing silently near the bar. Anna. She didn't say a word. Her head bowed gently, her hands clenched lightly around the tray she hadn't yet set down. He stepped forward and reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a plain white envelope. It wasn't a grand gesture. No cameras, no press, just one person recognizing the beauty in another soul. He handed the envelope to Anna and spoke in a sincere, steady voice. "I don't know if you recognize me, and it doesn't matter. What I do know is that you treated a complete stranger with kindness when everyone else chose to turn away. That's something not many people are willing to do." Anna opened the envelope, her hands trembling. Inside was a check, but it wasn't the amount that made her breath catch. It was the handwritten note above the signature. "For Anna, who reminded me that kindness needs no reason. Use this gift to attend culinary school, open a restaurant, or pursue whatever you believe in. The world needs more people like you." She couldn't hold back the tears. Silent, grateful sobs rolled down her cheeks. She had spent her youth working long hours, dreaming of the day she could enroll in culinary school. And now, that dream was suddenly within reach. The room remained hushed. Some covered their mouths. Some looked away. Those earlier sneers and skeptical glances had now become invisible knives, cutting into their own consciences. Elon turned to the restaurant manager, the same man who had asked him to leave because of how he looked. "I don't hold it against you, but I hope starting tomorrow this place will serve more than just good food. It will serve respect, because that's what makes people come back." The manager nodded. Not the proud man he had been earlier, but someone quietly relearning the basics of being human. And then Elon walked out of the restaurant, like a gentle breeze, unnoticed by cameras or headlines, but leaving behind the quiet glow of a soul that had just sown compassion. Part 6. Quiet but spreading. When kindness reaches the heart. After Elon Musk quietly left Copper Elm, the once proud restaurant no longer held the same air of superiority. No one spoke. No one dared to look one another in the eye. The gazes that once judged now fell to the floor, not out of shame, but from confronting their own conscience. Anna remained where she was, still holding the envelope with the handwritten message that had cracked her heart wide open. Those simple words, "Kindness is the currency that never loses its value," were now etched into her soul. A currency that never depreciates because it is born of humanity. She didn't say anything. Gently, she folded the note, placed her hand over her chest, and felt each beat hammering in her ribcage. Not because of the money, but because for the first time in her life she felt truly seen, recognized not for her appearance or title, but for her humanity. John, the manager, walked over slowly. The man who had always maintained a cold, calculating demeanor now showed clear signs of remorse. He stopped in front of Anna, eyes averted, voice low. I was wrong. I didn't think you'd be the only one brave enough to stand up. Anna simply nodded. No blame, no anger. She understood. Sometimes kindness doesn't need to be repaid. It only needs to be passed on. That evening, in the small back kitchen where staff usually gathered to joke around after shifts, silence took its place. Then someone quietly spoke. Maybe, from now on, we should actually do what we always say. Serve with heart. That small comment sparked a big change. John began holding regular meetings about respect, how to treat every customer equally, whether they wore a tailored suit or a worn-out jacket. The staff who once scoffed at Anna for serving Elon in his disguise now looked at her differently, with genuine respect. Anna didn't quit her job, but from that day on, every step she took between the tables felt lighter. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a source of inspiration. And whenever someone gave her a puzzled look, she simply smiled and said, "I just did the right thing." One act, one moment of courage, and a new chapter was written, not just for her, but for everyone who had once stood silently by. Part 7. From a small restaurant to millions of hearts. When kindness becomes a legacy. 3 days after that fateful night at Copper Elm, a grainy, short video began to circulate online. It captured the moment Elon Musk removed his disguise and quietly spoke about humanity. What started with just a few hundred shares suddenly went viral. Millions of views, thousands of emotional comments, far surpassing anyone's expectations. Headlines flooded news outlets and social media. Elon Musk goes undercover as homeless man, and a waitress changes an entire world in one night. Dignity over disguise, the billionaire's quiet test shakes the internet. The name Anna, the young waitress who once bore silent judgment, had now become a symbol. Reporters came calling. Television networks asked for interviews. But Anna didn't rush to speak. When she finally agreed, her voice was as gentle as that evening. "I just did what everyone should do. Treat someone kindly, even when you know nothing about them." Then, like a ripple effect, restaurants across the country began hosting staff trainings on how to treat unseen guests. Some who had been at Copper Elm that night even wrote personal letters of apology to Anna. They admitted they no longer turned away from homeless people on the street. But perhaps the most touching response came from a 15-year-old girl in another state who posted online, "Last night, my mom collapsed on the sidewalk. A homeless man helped her up. I thought of Anna. I turned back and thanked him. Just one word. But it was the first time I saw someone's eyes light up simply from being acknowledged as a human being." This story didn't end with the $50,000 check. It didn't stop at fame. It lived on through small acts, changed gazes, and quiet compassion. In a short interview weeks later, Elon Musk said something that made millions pause in reflection. "We build technology to change the world, but sometimes it's a bowl of soup and an unjudging glance that truly changes a human heart." And that all began with a waitress, a small table, and the belief that kindness, when given at the right moment in the right way, can redefine what it means to be human. A renowned psychologist once said, "It's not fame or fortune, but how we treat the vulnerable that most honestly reflects who we are." What happened that night at the Copper Elm wasn't just a test. It was a mirror. One that revealed a simple truth. In a world full of noise and judgment, sometimes all it takes is a warm bowl of soup or a gentle word to create a small miracle. And if today you felt your heart being moved by something beautiful, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share in the comments the kindest moment you've ever witnessed. Because who knows? The next story we tell might just be yours.